The first time she looked at me and didn't recognize who I was, I thought she was joking. We'd had our share of inside jokes, years of them, really. Little pranks and playful lies we told each other to keep the spark alive. But this wasn't that. This was the first time I saw fear in her eyes, because she truly didn't know me. She blinked at me, like I was a stranger. A gentle smile on her lips, the kind you give someone holding the door open at a grocery store, not your husband of 32 years. I forced a smile and handed her the cup of tea, watching her movements, every small gesture. Her fingers still circled the handle twice before lifting the cup to her lips. Her pinky still rose delicately like a dancer in mid-pose. But there was no light behind her gaze. She sipped, then paused. "Do I know you?" I felt my stomach turn inside out. My heart didn't just sink, it dropped into a hole I didn't know existed. "It's me, Eve," I whispered. "It's Daniel." She frowned slightly. Daniel, my name hung there in the room like an echo no one could place. And then, her eyes flicked to the record player in the corner. She stood up slowly, walked to it, and, without hesitation, pulled out the old vinyl she always loved. The one we used to dance to when the world outside felt too loud. She set the needle down, and as the first notes of "Can't Help Falling in Love" played, she closed her eyes. She began to hum, soft and slow, just like she used to when we were 25, barefoot in our first apartment. She didn't know my name. But she remembered our song. The doctors had warned me. Early onset Alzheimer's can be unpredictable, they said. Some days, she'll seem completely fine. Others, she won't know who you are. I had convinced myself I was ready. But you're never ready to watch the person you love fade like an old photograph. Evelyn had always been the strong one. A high school English teacher with sharp wit and a laugh that could cut through your worst day. I was the quiet one, Daniel the planner, Daniel the list maker, Daniel the safe choice. She called me her calm before the storm. And now, the storm was inside her. I had spent the last 6 months documenting her behavior, journaling her moments of confusion, charting her language loss. Doctors and specialists. Medications. Routine. Hope. But no one tells you how much it hurts to become a stranger to the love of your life. That night, after she went to bed, after the song had played twice, I sat on the floor of our bedroom, staring at the wedding photo we kept on the wall. Evelyn, glowing in her grandmother's lace dress. Me, in a slightly too big tux. Both of us smiling like the future couldn't possibly bend or break. What would she remember tomorrow? Would I have to introduce myself again? Would she forget our home next? Our daughter? Would she forget how she used to call me Dee when she was too tired to say my name? I didn't know. But I did know this, she remembered our song. So maybe, that's where I had to start. With the music. With the memories buried in melodies. With the rhythm of who we were, before names, before diagnoses, before fear. And then something happened. As I turned off the light, I heard her voice from down the hall. Soft. Humming again. Then she said something I hadn't heard in weeks. Dee, come sing with me. That night, I stood outside the bedroom door, not wanting to break the moment. Evelyn's voice carried through the hallway like a fragile whisper, humming our wedding song as if muscle memory knew what her mind couldn't. I leaned my head against the doorframe, eyes closed, holding on to every note like a lifeline. I didn't go in right away. Part of me was scared. Scared she might not remember saying my name. Scared she might not remember me at all. Evelyn and I met in college. I was a music theory major, and she was studying literature. I loved the science of sound, melody, tempo, meter. She loved the poetry behind it. She used to say, lyrics are just stories dressed in rhythm. We met during a student production, her directing a play, me composing background music for it. She hated the original score. I hated her critique. But somewhere in the chaos of rewrites and late-night rehearsals, we fell in love. She was always quick-witted, sharp-tongued, the kind of person who could quote Shakespeare in one breath and roast your fashion sense in the next. And I was always the steady one. I kept the calendar. Packed her lunches. Balanced her chaos. We made sense. And now, we don't. Not in the way we used to. The next morning, I made pancakes the way she liked them, thin, almost crepe-like, with honey and cinnamon dusted on top. She sat across from me, quiet, tapping her spoon on her teacup. When she looked up, her eyes were glassy. "Daniel, right?" I smiled, hiding the pinch in my chest. "Yeah. That's me." She nodded slowly, then whispered, "I had a dream, you were younger. You had that weird patch of hair you used to comb sideways." She chuckled. It looked ridiculous. We both laughed, and for a moment, it felt like nothing had changed. But it had. Because 10 minutes later, she called me Tom. I started keeping a notebook. Not for doctors. For me. I recorded every moment she remembered something small. A nickname. A recipe. A joke. I recorded the forgettings too. Sometimes she forgot the year. Other times, she forgot that her parents were gone. I had to sit with her while she cried for a father she believed was still alive. It was like grieving in loops, over and over again. And yet, through it all, she never forgot that one song. The one from our wedding. The one we sang off-key in the kitchen every Saturday morning. She'd hum it when she brushed her hair. When she watered the plants. When she couldn't remember who I was, but still smiled at the melody. I began to wonder, was that song some kind of anchor? Did it hold pieces of the version of her I had lost? One afternoon, our daughter, Maya, came over with her 2 kids. Evelyn lit up when she saw the children. She remembered their names, at least for a few minutes. But when Maya hugged her and said, "Hi Mom," Evelyn stiffened. Confused. Polite. Later, Maya pulled me aside. "Is she getting worse?" I hesitated. "She forgets things more often," I said. "But she remembers the music." Maya's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know what's harder. Watching her forget you, or watching her remember only bits of me." I didn't have an answer. Because I didn't know either. That night, Evelyn asked me something she hadn't asked in years. "Do you think I've been a good wife?" I looked at her, unsure of how to hold all the weight behind that question. "You've been everything to me," I said. "Even now. Especially now." She nodded, quietly. And then she hummed the first few bars of our song. I held her hand, and for the first time in days, she didn't flinch. And I knew the truth, she might forget everything else, but somewhere deep inside, the music was keeping us both alive. Evelyn had a good day. At least that's what the nurse called it. She smiled more. Ate well. Hummed our song during lunch and even remembered how to use the TV remote. That was a small victory, they said. I tried to be thankful for it. But the truth was, these good days were starting to feel more like brief surface ripples, right before a deeper storm pulled us under again. Later that evening, we sat in the living room while Maya FaceTimed from her apartment across town. Her voice chirped through the screen as the grandkids waved excitedly. Evelyn smiled, nodded, and tried to follow along. But her eyes flickered, distracted, like someone watching a movie they vaguely remembered from long ago. "Grandma," little Noah said, "do you remember the song we sang in the car last week?" Evelyn smiled politely. "Oh yes, of course I do, sweetheart." But I knew she didn't. Her smile was too careful. Her eyes were too blank. After the call, she turned to me and asked, "Was that your niece?" My heart cracked just a little more. Around that time, a letter arrived. From the memory care facility we'd visited a few months ago, just in case. They were following up, letting us know a space had opened up. I stared at the envelope on the table for hours, unopened. How could I even consider it? But then I thought about last week, when Evelyn wandered out the front door while I was in the shower. It took 10 minutes to find her, standing barefoot on the sidewalk, looking up at the trees like she'd never seen them before. She didn't know her name that day. She thought she was a child again. That night, I asked her gently, "Do you remember our daughter's name?" Evelyn looked at me, eyes searching my face. "She's lovely. Blonde hair, yes." "Is it Lucy?" "No," I said quietly. "It's Maya." She frowned, her lips trembling. "I'm sorry." I held her hand. "It's okay." "No, it's not," she whispered. "I don't want to forget her. I don't want to forget you." And then she began to cry, the kind of crying that came from somewhere too deep to touch. I had never felt more helpless. The next morning, Maya came over, holding a small journal. "Mom wrote this before things got worse," she said, eyes watery. She hid it in her drawer. "I only found it this morning." We opened it together. Inside were letters addressed to both of us, dated months ago. One read, "To my Daniel, if you're reading this, I know what's happening. I may not remember your name one day, but I'll never forget your soul. That's why I asked the doctors to help me record the memories I'm afraid to lose. Don't give up on me, not even when I give up on myself." Eve. I closed the journal slowly, struggling to breathe. She knew. She had known all along. That evening, Evelyn didn't speak much. She just stared out the window at the rain. "I feel like there's something I'm supposed to be holding on to," she said softly. "But every time I reach for it, it disappears." I sat beside her, laid my hand over hers, and whispered, "You're holding it now." The pressure was growing. From the doctors. From Maya. From myself. The facility would call again soon. And I didn't know what to tell them. All I knew was that the woman beside me, the one who had forgotten our daughter's name, the one who barely knew me some days, still sang the first verse of our song every single night before she fell asleep. And in those moments, I wasn't her nurse. I wasn't her stranger. I was Daniel. Her Daniel. The journal entries grew darker toward the end. What began as hopeful reflections, Evelyn reminding herself of birthdays, favorite meals, inside jokes, turned into broken fragments of fear and confusion. One page just read, if I forget Maya, tell her I didn't mean to. Another one, I dreamed I woke up and didn't know where I was. I screamed but no sound came out. That night, she woke up crying. I found her in the hallway, trembling in her robe, her breath shallow and fast. I don't know where I am, she whispered. I don't know who I am. I held her, whispering over and over, you're safe. You're home. I'm here. I'm Daniel. But the way she looked at me, like I was some kind of kind stranger, it gutted me. I don't want to be crazy, she said. You're not, I whispered. You're just lost. And I'm not leaving you. She rested her forehead on my chest. Then please don't let them take me away. The facility called again the next morning. The nurse on the other end of the line was calm, polite. They had a room ready. They understood our situation. It would be peaceful, they promised. Safe. Structured. I stared at the phone long after she hung up. The weight of that decision felt heavier than anything I had ever carried. Because this wasn't just about safety. It was about letting go. Letting go of the home we built. The routines. The smell of cinnamon in the morning. The record player that still sat in the corner, unused but waiting. Our life. If I let her go there, would she come back at all? Would there be a version of her left to recognize me? That afternoon, Evelyn had one of her worst episodes yet. She thought I was her father. She yelled when I tried to help her up. Threw a picture frame against the wall. Her eyes didn't see me, they saw a threat. It took 20 minutes for her to calm down. When she finally sat down, she looked up at me with red, swollen eyes and said, Daniel would never raise his voice at me. I didn't know how to respond. So I just sat there beside her in silence. Later, I found Maya in the kitchen. She was trying not to cry. Dad, this is getting dangerous. I know, I said. She needs professional care now. I nodded, but my hands were shaking. She asked me to keep her home, I whispered. And if she burns the house down while you're sleeping? Maya shot back, her voice cracking. Will she still be safe then? The silence between us wasn't quiet, it was heavy and deafening. That night, I stayed up playing our wedding song on the record player. Evelyn walked into the room slowly, half asleep. Her face softened at the sound. She didn't speak. Just walked to me, wrapped her arms around my waist, and laid her head on my chest. For a moment, just a single moment, everything felt okay. She looked up at me. Dance with me, she asked. I nodded. We swayed in silence. She didn't say my name. She didn't call me anything at all. But she hummed. And I knew, somewhere deep inside, the part of her that loved me was still holding on. The next morning, she didn't wake up in her bed. She wasn't in the kitchen. Not in the backyard. The front door was open. My heart stopped. I ran down the porch, calling her name into the empty street, the cold morning air slicing into my chest. No answer. Just wind and silence. She was gone. The street was empty. No sign of her anywhere. I yelled until my throat felt raw. I knocked on every neighbor's door. Maya was already on the phone with the police. The nurse from the clinic came by when she heard what happened, offering to help coordinate the search. Every second that passed stretched like a lifetime. Then a call came through. She's here, said a soft voice. At the college campus. I froze. The campus? The same one where we met, more than 30 years ago. When I arrived, I saw her sitting on a bench outside the old music hall. Her hair was windblown. Her shoes were soaked from the morning dew. She looked smaller, fragile, like time had finally caught her. I approached carefully. She didn't recognize me. I was supposed to meet someone here, she said softly, her eyes scanning the courtyard. Who? I asked, already knowing. A boy. He played the piano. I think his name was Dan. Tears welled up in my eyes. I'm here, I whispered. It's me, Eve. It's Daniel. She tilted her head, uncertain. Then, after a moment, she gave the faintest smile. I waited a long time, she said. And for a while, we just sat there. That night, after we returned home, I tucked her into bed and sat with the journal in my hands again. There were a few pages in the back I hadn't read yet. They looked older, written in a shakier hand. One entry stopped me cold. If I disappear, look where we began. That's where I'll go when I forget everything else. She knew. She planned for this. The next morning, while she napped, Maya brought over some of the boxes from Evelyn's classroom. She had taught high school for nearly 25 years and always kept journals, lesson plans, letters from students. One folder fell open as we sorted through them. Inside was a sealed envelope with my name written in Evelyn's familiar cursive. I opened it slowly. It wasn't a letter. It was a document. A medical directive. Dated 6 months before the diagnosis. I sat down, stunned. The papers stated her wishes clearly: if her condition worsened past a certain point, if she began to lose herself, became a danger to others, or wandered frequently, she wanted to be placed in care. She hadn't told me. In fact, she had begged me not to send her away. And yet, here it was. Signed. Legal. Witnessed. I didn't understand. Why would she hide this from me? Maya sat beside me in silence, reading over my shoulder. She was trying to protect you, she whispered. She didn't want you to feel guilty for letting go. The guilt hit like a wave. Had I been keeping her home for her, or for me? Was I ignoring her wishes because I couldn't bear the thought of being alone? Had I become the reason she kept suffering? That night, Evelyn had another episode. She thought the bedroom was her old college dorm. She asked me if her roommate had gone out to a party. She thought I was the RA. She barely spoke above a whisper, her hands trembling, her eyes darting around the room like it was unfamiliar and hostile. I tried everything: music, tea, her favorite sweater, but nothing calmed her down. Finally, I played our song. And for a second, she paused. She looked at me, tearful and confused. "I'm so tired, Daniel," she said. "I don't want to be lost anymore." The next morning, I called the memory care facility. I told them we were ready. But I wasn't. I never would be. The day Evelyn moved into the memory care home was the quietest day of my life. No music. No small talk. No sounds, just the weight of everything we were leaving behind. She clutched a small suitcase in her lap as we drove. Inside were simple things: a sweater Maya knit for her, the framed photo from our wedding, and a handheld music player loaded with one song on repeat, our song. When we arrived, she didn't protest. She didn't panic. She looked at the building the same way someone stares at a word they once knew but can't quite place. "This looks familiar," she whispered. I just nodded. Her room was warm and soft, painted a calming shade of blue. The nurses greeted us kindly. They spoke gently to Evelyn, showing her the flowers on the windowsill and the bookshelf filled with titles she once loved. I stood in the doorway the whole time, gripping the doorframe to keep from collapsing. When they finished the tour, Evelyn turned to me with a small smile. "Are you going to be okay here?" she asked, mistaking me for the one staying. I forced a smile. "I think I will." Over the next few weeks, I visited her every day. Sometimes, she greeted me like I was an old friend. Sometimes, she didn't recognize me at all. But each time I walked in, I brought music. The nurses said she was adjusting well. She had even started humming in the afternoons. They told me she remembered how to fold towels perfectly, and once corrected another resident on the lyrics of a Beatles song. There were small moments, tiny sparks of her shining through. Moments where I could still see Evelyn. Moments where I believed she could still see me too. One evening, after dinner, I brought my guitar. I hadn't played in front of her in months. Not since the night she wandered off. But that evening, she was sitting by the window, her hair pulled back neatly, her eyes distant but calm. I sat beside her and began strumming softly, the same chords we danced to all those years ago. She didn't speak. But she closed her eyes. And then, as if on instinct, she began to hum. Every note in perfect pitch. I kept playing, unable to stop the tears from falling. When the song ended, she looked at me. Really looked at me. "Daniel," she said softly. And in that one word, I felt everything we had been losing slowly come back, just for a breath, just for a blink. She reached up, touched my cheek. "I remember," she whispered. Not everything, but the song, the way it felt. I held her hand, heart pounding. "I remember too," I said. That was the last day she said my name. After that, the decline was sharper. She forgot the nurses. She forgot how to eat on her own. She rarely opened her eyes. But she still hummed. Every night, the same melody. The one thread that refused to break. One morning, the call came. Evelyn had passed quietly in her sleep, the music player still on her nightstand, still softly playing the song. I sat on our front porch, the sunlight pouring down like it didn't know what had been taken from the world. I didn't cry at first. I just listened. To the wind. To the silence. To the echoes of her voice. A week later, Maya and I scattered her ashes beneath the old oak tree near the college. The same place she waited for me that morning she wandered. We played the song on a speaker as the wind carried her away. "She never forgot," Maya said. "No," I whispered. "She remembered the part that mattered. And that's the part one hold on to now. Even when everything else fades. Even when the days are quiet. She forgot my name. But she remembered our song. And somehow, that was enough." It's been a year since Evelyn passed. The house is quieter now, but not empty. Her presence still lingers in the smallest of things, the framed wedding photo in the hallway, the faint smell of lavender on her old cardigan, the worn grooves on the record player's needle. Every evening, I still sit on the porch with my guitar. I don't always play, but sometimes the silence speaks louder than music ever could. And when I do play, I always start with the same song. Our song. The one she never let go of, even when the rest of her world unraveled. In the beginning, I thought the cruelest part of her illness was that she forgot my name. I held on to it like it was the last piece of us, something sacred, something irreplaceable. But over time, I realized names are just labels. Love doesn't need a name to be real. Evelyn may have forgotten who I was in her mind, but her soul remembered me. She remembered the sound of my laugh, the way my hand felt in hers, the rhythm of our love in that melody. She remembered the emotion. The connection. And that was everything. After her passing, I started volunteering at the same memory care facility. Not out of obligation, but out of understanding. I saw myself in the eyes of the husbands, wives, sons, and daughters who walked in with heavy hearts, trying to reach someone who felt out of reach. I tell them about Evelyn. About how sometimes, even when everything seems lost, love finds a way to shine through. Maya visits more often now. She says she feels closer to her mother here than she ever did in the final days at home. She brings me books. We drink tea and talk about Evelyn's quirks, how she'd hum when she was deep in thought, how she could never fall asleep without a corner of the blanket tucked under her chin. She told me once, "It's weird, Dad. Even though she's gone, I feel like we talk about her more now than we ever did when she was alive." Maybe grief does that. Maybe it turns memories into conversations. One day, I found Evelyn's last journal tucked inside a box I thought we had already packed away. Inside was a note I hadn't seen before. "If I can't be me anymore, promise me you'll still be you. Play the music. Keep dancing. And don't lock yourself away in the dark just because I forgot the light." I cried for a long time after reading that. Then I turned on the record player, opened the curtains, and let the sun fill the room. She was right. I didn't need to remember everything perfectly. I just needed to remember her love.